Greetings, metalheads, and welcome to No Nonsense Metal Reviews. I'm George, and today I have a new release review for you. A new release that the moment I heard that this album was in the pipeline, as soon as I learned of this impending release, I was extremely excited. And I have been highly anticipating this one for a long time. It is from UK, Yorkshire to be more specific, Yorkshire's finest metal export, the mighty Saxon, NWOBHM kings, absolute legends, just metal gods. The mighty Saxon with album number 24, 24 studio albums in. That's pretty incredible. If we consider that that's in 45 years, we've got 24 albums. An astounding rate of releases and work, and this Hell, Fire and Damnation is an absolute gem. It's an incredible album, absolutely brilliant. 24 albums in, and Saxon sound better than ever. Not to say that they didn't sound fantastic in the beginning, but they just seem to have gone from strength to strength to strength. And I know that I have gone on record numerous times on this channel. If you've been following, then you'll know that Saxon are one of my absolute all-time favourite bands. I would actually even go as far as to say that Saxon is my favourite band. And this, Hellfire and Damnation, this absolutely delivers. This is superb. This is Saxon on top form. This is Saxon being Saxon. And this particular article here is lovely digipack. Very nice indeed. Cool physical article. But what's even cooler than that is this pre-order came with a signed insert. Awesome stuff. I do have a signed picture disc of Power and the Glory, but this will go alongside very nicely. Should put it in a frame, in fact. Lovely indeed. So, the Mighty Saxon. This is album number 24, and this is the first album to feature the slightly different lineup. So, long-running key member, integral member of Saxon, the great Paul Quinn, guitarist, is out of the band, it seems. And I was kind of misinterpreting the situation. I was under the impression when I originally read this that Paul Quinn was stepping back from the touring, but he was still going to be involved in the kind of writing and studio recording process. That was my impression. However, I was surprised to see that the lineup here includes Brian Tatler. No mention in the sort of the main lineup there of Paul Quinn. The only reference is additional guitars on Fire and Steel and Supercharger. So Brian Tatler, the legendary guitarist and founding member of the mighty Diamond Head, has taken over from Paul Quinn. Brian features in the photograph, the band shot on the back there. And he also features in the photography in the insert, the booklet here. So it seems that Paul has stepped back a little bit more than I initially realised. That said, because I did have a little bit of, not skepticism, because Brian is an absolutely fantastic guitarist. You just listen to any of the Diamond Head albums, in particularly, in my opinion, the most recent few releases from the band, the re-recording of Lightning to the Nations, Coffin Train, and the self-titled album. That is Diamond Head on top form, and Brian is a phenomenal guitarist. Absolutely fantastic. So I had no reservations about that. And I would say that on Hellfire and Damnation, Brian's guitar work, his solos and his rhythm guitars, fantastic. Absolutely. It still sounds distinctively like Saxon. There's no question about that. You've still obviously got the recognisable guitar work and sound of the great Doug Scarrett. I think he is a fantastic guitarist as well. And I would admit that there is less of a notable difference between the albums that do feature Paul Quinn, such as the more recent albums, Carpe Diem, Thunderbolt, Battering Ram, and Hellfire and Damnation. There's very minimal differentiation in terms of the kind of the guitar sound, if you like. Of course, I think the reservation mainly came from the fact that you're losing an integral key member, a long-running member of the band, Paul Quinn, stepping back. I think that if I remember correctly, touring and I guess the schedule of Saxon was just a little bit too much for him. They're a constantly touring band, constantly in the studio. They're a very busy outfit. They have shown no signs of slowing down over the years. So this album, first one to feature Brian predominantly on guitars alongside Doug Scarrett. I guess Doug kind of taking the lead role, if you like, but also Paul Quinn only featuring on a couple of tracks, although they do happen to be two of the best tracks on the album. The rest of the band sound fantastic. Absolutely, age and time has not slowed these guys down. Nigel Glocker behind the drum throne there, fantastic. That guy's an absolute machine, smashing that kit apart like a young man, full of energy, full of power, brilliant. Nibs on bass, Nibs Carter, sounds fantastic. He's a very good bassist. He's kind of up there, in my opinion, with the likes of Steve Harris. You know, these very talented, clearly very talented bass guitarists. And of course, Biff Byford. Vocals, that man sounds better now than he did back in the early days. Not to say that I don't think he was a fantastic vocalist then. He just seems to have gotten better, aged like a fine wine, if you like. His vocals are absolutely fantastic. He sounds brilliant here. And maybe that is a bit of an exaggeration to say that he sounds better now than he did, you know, back on Wheels of Steel or Power and the Glory. Maybe that's a discredit to the guy, because he has always been a fantastic vocalist, and I personally rank Biff Byford as being one of the best metal vocalists. I think he has a fantastic, iconic voice. He's a brilliant singer. I like the fact that he's unashamedly a Yorkshireman. You know, you can hear his dialect in there, you can hear his accent. And that just kind of, for me, heightens the working man, honest, humble, genuine kind of feel about the band and their whole approach and ethics. So, the band are on top form. Brian, Doug, Nibs, Nigel and Biff. Absolutely flawless. The album itself sounds stunning. Mixed, mastered, produced by Andy Sneap. Of course, Andy Sneap, an incredible talent himself, has put his stamp on this album. And this album sounds, Hellfire and Damnation sounds fantastic. It really does continue a flawless run of albums. I personally really like all eras of Saxon. Saxon don't have a bad album, in my opinion. You know, I even enjoy the kind of the more hard rock, melodic kind of period of the band, with albums like Innocence Is No Excuse and Destiny. I really, really, really enjoy the heavier kind of power metal era of the band as well. That kind of difficult period, but it produced some of the best Saxon albums, in my opinion. Albums like Into the Labyrinth or Lionheart, for example, absolutely stunning. I also really like Call to Arms. I think it's a fantastic album. But I think really from Sacrifice through Battering Ram, through Thunderbolt, through Carpe Diem, and now into Hellfire and Damnation, they've been on a flawless run. It delivers start to finish, not a bad track. They are more heavy metal now, I think, whereas some of those kind of power metal years albums, they were really quite heavy and intense. You take an album like The Inner Sanctum, and that's almost like thrash speed and heaviness at times. There's some really heavy stuff in their catalogue. Albums like Unleash the Beast, really heavy. But I would say now they sound more traditionally heavy metal, more of a NWOBHM sound than a kind of power metal or thrash intensity. That said, this is 42 minutes, I believe, if I remember correctly, 42 minutes of British heavy metal Saxon excellence. It really is, and I'm not just saying that. The album kicks off with an intro, The Prophecy, which is narrated by the legendary Brian Blessed, which makes for a very interesting appearance, and it certainly sets the theme perfectly before we're launched into Hellfire and Damnation, and it really is an absolute scorcher. It is a thunderously heavy track. It's brilliant. It's full of amazing guitar work, Biff's legendary vocals. Whole thing sounds iconically like Saxon, and it brings to mind the kind of really punchy, in-your-face opening tracks that we've had for the last however many albums. You know, where we kick off an album with a track like Sacrifice, for example, or Battering Ram, Thunderbolt, Carpe Diem. Those title tracks, they've delivered. They have been worthy of the album title's name. Definitely worthy title tracks. Then we're into the rather sinister, melodic, but seriously heavy and macabre Madame Guillotine, which is fantastic. An absolute belter at that. Some really good chugging riffs there. On to track 4, Fire and Steel, which is personally one of my favourite tracks on the album. I absolutely love it. It's a faster paced track. It's heavy metal, speed metal, if you like. Lyrically and thematically, it's about the steel production of Sheffield, the Steel City. And for me, I absolutely love that sort of thing. I have a great interest in history, particularly of this country. And I do love that kind of the industrial might, the working man approach. You know, it just does it for me. And I know that Biff is clearly a big fan of the whole working class approach and the humble man just putting the work in and getting jobs done, building a mighty city or building a mighty country. So that's an absolute belter. As I say, phenomenal guitar work on that track, an absolute standout. Then we've got the rather kind of odd, but still freaking great, There's Something in Roswell. Love the thematics. Again, I love my extraterrestrial stuff. I'm a total geek for things like that. I absolutely love it. Thematically, it's brilliant. It sounds like groovy, stomping heavy metal. Freaking excellent stuff. Then we are on the brilliant and rather grand Kubla Khan and the Merchant of Venice, which is a glorious one. Again, it's quite a bit more melodic. It's a little bit more grand in nature, I would say. But it's a fantastic composition. Sounds brilliant. Pirates of the Airwaves, which is a fantastic track. That's the nod to sticking it to the man and pursuing, not giving in, and pursuing your love for the music. Brilliant stuff. It's a great story in itself. But that's your AC/DC style rocking number. That's the hard rocking track. Before we get probably the heaviest track on the album, 1066, which is, as I say, definitely the heaviest track on this album. That's a heavy metal track. That's a speed track. Some seriously heavy riff work. Brilliant vocals. Thematics are brilliant, of course, about the Norman conquest of England. Then we've got Witches of Salem. Heavy, sinister, grooving, stomping. A little bit different. It's kind of one of the more different tracks of the album. Seriously good number though. And then we close the album with Supercharger, which is full throttle. It's about racing or driving, something of the like. But it's a fast and furious speed metal Saxon assault. Absolutely crushing stuff. Brilliant. Guitar work's merciless. Absolutely love it. This album is the first album in a long while, I will say, that I have listened to, not just off Saxon, but it's actually given me goosebumps when I have put it on for that first time, which is exactly what happened with Carpe Diem and exactly what happened with Thunderbolt, and that is no exaggeration. It is brilliant, genuine, heavy metal excellence from one of the most important bands of that movement. Let's not forget, although Saxon hasn't reached the commercial status of Iron Maiden, or I will say Def Leppard, just because of the importance of their early first 3 albums for the development of heavy metal, certainly the new wave of British heavy metal. They might not have reached that commercial success, but in terms of quality, consistency, and just delivering the goods time and time again, and actually putting in the miles, putting in the road work, Saxon, hands down, are one of the most important bands in metal, in my personal opinion, and I know that a lot of other people share that opinion as well. Without Saxon, we wouldn't have nearly as many great bands that have been inspired by them, of course, as we do today. So, Hellfire and Damnation, would I say it's the best Saxon album to date? I would say that Saxon don't have any bad albums, and I would say that it is a continuation, as I've mentioned earlier, of a flawless run of albums. It is just as strong as Carpe Diem. is just as strong as Thunderbolt, just as strong as Battering Ram, and Sacrifice as well. So is it better? It's certainly just as good as their previous efforts. One makes you wonder what Saxon will come up with next, because they are on a very, very good trajectory here. And I personally have observed in the metal world, being a very close follower, as you can see and as you can imagine, I think there's been a lot more love and a lot more appreciation for Saxon over the last, say, decade. They've been really growing, definitely. And I very much look forward to catching the Mighty Saxon opening up for, or not opening up, but main support rather, for the legendary Judas Priest. I very much look forward to that. And I really, really do hope that Saxon go out on their own headline tour again, because if they're playing, I'm going. That's a guarantee. They're one of those bands for me where I just won't miss it. So, Hellfire and Damnation, you need to pick up a copy. It is solid heavy metal excellence. If you're not familiar with Saxon, but maybe you're a fan of Maiden, maybe you're a fan of Diamond Head, maybe you're a fan of Metallica, I don't know, check them out. You will not be disappointed. Tracks to check out on this album: obviously the title track, Hellfire and Damnation, Fire and Steel, one of my favourites, and I would say probably 1066 for me. They're my personal 3 favourite tracks on this album. But I'll be interested to hear the thoughts and opinions of others. What are your thoughts on Hellfire and Damnation? What are your thoughts on the Mighty Saxon? Very interested to hear thoughts and opinions of others, as always. But thank you very much for watching, my friends. Check out the album, show your support. Do check back soon for more reviews and recommendations of all the good heavy things. Above all, take care of yourselves, my friends. And until next time, stay heavy.